officially. Okay, so we're officially starting now. Welcome everybody. My name is Stephanie Elkins. I'm an elder care coach and consultant with Be Present Care. My business and life work is to guide and support caregiving and end-of-life conversations, plans, and programs for individuals, family caregivers, healthcare professionals, and organizations. I'm so honored to be able to facilitate and co-host this Behind the Red Tape Legacy, Disposition, and Ceremony Planning session. We are offering this again because we did get such a wonderful response from our first one. So we're geared up to share some vital information today and hear and see about some of the questions and answer some of your questions as well. We do have a lot of content to be able to share with you tonight. Just a few grounding rules as we get started. As you notice, we are recording this session and you will be getting that afterwards. Although we love to see and hear from all of you, we decided to keep this on mute for all of you and just focus on the chat room today. And also if you'd like to be off screen, even though we'd love to see you most of the time, so you can really focus on our speakers today. So if you notice you're not there, don't fret. We were really wanting to run it more like a webinar than meeting because we have so many of you with us today. So thank you for that little grounding rules as well. These are also topics that can raise a lot of discomfort and different feelings. If that's the case, this is not a support group per se. We're providing a lot of education and support and feedback, but if you can always feel free to contact us afterwards if you want more information and resources. Let's go to the next screen. I'm always so pleased and humbled to work with the Institute on Aging. And I'm having a little default here as I want to move to the next slide, and it's not working with me.
And I just want to say, this is Catlin Morgan, Education Manager for Institute on Aging. It is always a pleasure to work with Stephanie Elkins, who has brought together this terrific panel once again. You're in for a treat today. If you didn't attend the first part of this recently, about a month ago, you'll certainly appreciate the continuation of the information and the Q&A that's expanded for this one.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Yeah, so Catlin just took it right out of my mouth because I was about to say the same thing about Catlin and what she offers through Institute on Aging, because it's so humbling once again to partner with her and really show the whole value of the continuum of care, what's needed at end of life, and that's really what we're presenting here today. So Institute on Aging serves a diverse population of older adults and disabled adults through innovative programs which promote maintenance of health, well-being, independence, and participation in the community. They serve Greater San Francisco and the San Bernardino communities. One of the greatest benefits of partnership of the Institute on Aging is that because of their professionalism, as well as that they do offer CEUs. So I know a lot of you are probably potentially here for that. Stay tuned for after this. You will be getting an email from Catlin to fill out a CEU evaluation form. To get that, along with some really great resources from all the presenters here today, all their content information and all of that. So stand by for all of that. So one of the other things that were really great, and many of you probably found out about us, is through Institute on Aging or through the Reimagine Festival. And as you already heard from Catlin, she has, as the education manager for Institute on Aging, she also has a wonderful voice and spirit. So I wanted her to lead us and ground us today some more, not just in Zoom, but in this Reimagine intention as we move forward.
Thank you, Stephanie. I also want to put in one more small plug for IOA. We actually also serve Santa Clara and San Mateo counties too. And now let's all take a deep breath and we can read this intention together, but I will take the lead. There is no life without death, no love without loss, They are in constant complementary motion. But never before in our lives has the world stood so still in the face of distance, illness, and isolation. We are here together, reimagining a changed world, kinder, slower, more just. We are reimagining the giving and receiving of love, the cycles of loss and new beginnings, and what it means to be fully alive. We are here.
Thanks, Catlin. Greatly appreciate you reading and sharing and being a big supporter of all of us working in the community with you. So just to start again with the agenda. Love technology. Okay, so we have every one of these speakers today can not just be an hour and a half on their own, and more so, but we're here to really showcase how it can really move from one piece of content to another. We host, like I mentioned, we hosted this session at the end of June, and since we are providing a lot of various content, we hope this helps you both personally and professionally. First, we're going to start off with a little polling that to kind of get a sense of who's in the room here with us and what your needs and wants are, because we are offering such a diverse programming and planning programming here. And so we're going to basically do a little polling. Then each one of these individuals, these are going to give about 10 to 12 minutes, giving them a little room to kind of guide us in their expertise areas. And then we're going to come back together, and that's when we're really going to do the group chat. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat box. Catlin's going to be the moderator of that, and then I'm going to facilitate a discussion with our panelists here who tend to like to, you know, get the questions, but they also like to talk to each other as well. So you'll get a little bit of both of that as we're here together. So I've called this our A team as of today, and I found we all need those to kind of count on in different areas. So I'm going to read something. I don't know. It's kind of cheesy, kind of kitschy. Yes, I'm given the space to do that. So I was reading. I did a little research on the A team, and in 1972, a crack commando unit was sent to prison by a military court for a crime they didn't commit. These men or women here probably escaped from a maximum security stockade to the Los Angeles underground. Most of us are from greater Los Angeles, even though we've moved around a little bit. They first survived as soldiers of fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can't find them, maybe you can hire the A team. So this is really for us right now, is to provide you some resources and content and see how we can be of valued support for you. So I'm going to go ahead and start some polling right now. And I'm going to turn this off for a second, and I'm going to share some polling so we can kind of get to know who is with us today. All right, so hopefully you see this polling here for you of what field and specialty are you in. If you want to go ahead and fill that out, that would be terrific. Are you in advocacy or policy, care coordination and management, bereavement, grief, death care, end of life? We want to know who's with us today. I see mostly right now we have healthcare and medical care workers. Our co-hosts can kind of get a sense of who's in the room with us as well. Thank you so much for filling out. Wellness other, great. We have 2 questions, so make sure you see both questions. One is, what field specialty are you in? And then if you scroll down, you can see what plan are you or do you want to be working on now for yourself? We might be checking up with you on that as to be of continued support for you, but it looks like everybody's interested in a lot of different areas. So I think this is going to be really helpful for us in providing you some content and some Q&As you want to at the very end. So thank you. We're going to be ending this poll in just a few minutes, a couple seconds. Wow, we're getting a really good poll turnout here. We have 71%. I am proud of all of you for kind of helping filling out this poll right now. Okay, I'll give a couple more seconds. Yes, I'm so glad you're all here and that we are able to give you some great content in a lot of different areas.
I'm not surprised there's no one from the legal community. It is so bad.
That's why we have to go to them, right? Yeah, and you're a specialist. You're a specialist. Rebecca, I'm sure you're the one that speaks a lot to your own colleagues.
I do, and they don't care about this part.
Oh.
Drives me nuts.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, this is for us. I think in the death care space as well, we're always about advocating out on behalf of our work. So it's not that surprising, as well as even about the end of life and advanced care planning within the healthcare space. We really have to advocate hard and do programs like this. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the poll right now. I'm going to share results just so you can kind of get a sense of who's in the room with us. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. We got a mix of everybody. We got some death care professionals. I think that's kind of, and health, social human services. I kind of find myself in all these roles. I'm a generalist, but yeah, I find myself in a lot of these roles. So thank you so much for taking the time to fill that out. If you're surprised by anything, feel free to write in the chat box. All right, I'm gonna turn that off right now. Thank you for participating in that. All right, we're going to move on, and we are going to, it's now time for Rebecca to share a little bit about the planning that we were talking about earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And thank you all for being patient with me. Okay, go ahead. You can go ahead and get started, Rebecca, in introducing yourself.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca Goldfarb, and I am an estate planning and elder law attorney. And for those of you who don't know about elder law attorneys, we're an invaluable resource. We not only make sure that the estate planning documents are updated, but we also act as a resource hub so that we can refer out all the people who are here today for whatever their specialties are. And so sometimes we end up coaching people on how to navigate the world of aging, and certainly serve as a resource and sometimes a mediator for families. So my background is I was the only grandchild in my family. So I have cared for 7 people, not including my parents yet. Knock on wood, they don't need that yet. And so I started young, learning about end of life stuff. My first grandpa died when I was 16. He had open heart surgery, and then within months had stage 4 brain cancer. And so I learned really young on how to do this. My last grandma died in 2012, so I haven't been in a lot of hospitals since, which I'm grateful for right now. And so I think my reason for being here today is to break down some myths and assumptions that we all make. So I have to start my timer so I don't lose track of time. So the why of why people should do planning is to make sure that you discover your own wishes. So part of that is end of life, and part of that is after you're gone. And you want to make sure they get honored. So you have to write them down, and you have to put the right people in charge to make those decisions for you and honor your wishes. And we also want to avoid court because it is extraordinarily expensive and a waste of emotional resources. So there's a lot that we do to to help ensure that we don't end up in court. And also we want to maintain family harmony. I think that is the most important thing when we're all gone is, you know, how does everyone we leave behind get along? So the what of what we do is we plan for incapacity and death. So it is not always the easiest topics to talk about, but it is so important and so gratifying that we can help everyone we touch navigate this process together. So there are 5 main documents in an estate plan. Now, normally, I know Stephanie mentioned, normally, you know, I talk about this for an hour and a half all by myself. So I'm going to go really fast. I did share about this in the last one, so it'll be a refresher if you've seen our presentation before. But if you have any questions or you want more information, please reach out to me, and I am happy to get on the phone or get on a Zoom and talk through some issues. So the main documents are obviously the Advanced Healthcare Directive. So this is the legal document that allows someone else to stand in your shoes and make decisions for you if you are incapacitated. It also allows that person to handle your burial, cremation, whatever your wishes are at the end. And so without that Advanced Healthcare Directive and a HIPAA waiver, you have to make sure that your advanced directives include a HIPAA waiver. I know that the medical community violates HIPAA all the time because it's the right thing to do, but you don't want to set your plan up assuming that they will, just in case they don't. So HIPAA, as you all probably know, is the Privacy Act between the medical community and us. And while you can say, yeah, I want you to talk to this person, that's fine. But when you can't give that consent, then you need your HIPAA waiver. The Advanced Directive has 2 parts to it. It has both the who can make medical decisions, and it also should have the wishes part. The living will is what it's called in other states, but we combine the power of attorney and the living will for the Advanced Directive. So we're going to talk a lot about today about the issues that should be addressed in your Advanced Directive. For the most part in my community of legal professionals, this is an ancillary document. It is a fill in the blank. It is completely anemic, and it is not allowing your agent, whoever is next in line, to really truly understand your wishes. And I spend about an hour talking about this in every initial meeting with clients, and every single one who's come from another attorney said nobody ever talked about any of that. And even spouses who've been together a long time, they don't know all of the definitions and thought process that their spouse has. So I can't encourage you enough to talk about this. The next part is the power of attorney. So the health directive is for your body, right? And who makes these medical decisions and where you live and all of that. And the power of attorney is for everything else. So it's bills and taxes and insurance, pensions, Social Security, all of the financial and legal matters. Now, if you are over 18, which probably everyone on this Zoom is, if you're over 18 and you do not have these documents, you are headed to conservatorship. Conservatorship is the process that you get in front of a judge, and the judge is deciding who's going to make either health or power of attorney decisions for you. And it may not be the person you want it to be, and you have no control over who that is. So you cannot create these documents once you lose capacity. You have to do it in advance. So today, if for all of you who don't have an advanced directive and power of attorney, go on to the county website or the state website, print out a statutory version of these documents and fill them out. You are giving a gift to your loved ones to have this done. Conservatorship here starts at about $10,000, and it's about $5,000 thereafter every year for the rest of your life. It is so invasive and for the most part avoidable. So once you pass away, those documents are essentially over, and then we look at your trust and your will. All wills, and of course I'm only speaking for California, but all wills go through probate. Probate is a very expensive process. It's roughly 4% of your estate, and you do not get to subtract a mortgage. So we want to avoid probate because it's expensive. And also now with COVID, it's about a 2-year process to get through. A trust administration is much more seamless. It's not public, it's private, and it's a lot less expensive. So we are very trust-based here. So I have so much that I want to talk about and not enough time to address everything. But it suffices to say, with your trust, if you have one, make sure you have funded it. Make sure you have retitled your assets from your names to the trust name with you as trustee. If you have not done this, we will end up in court afterwards, likely, depending upon what assets and how much they are that are outside of the trust. Most people look at the trust and they're reading the document and they say, oh, look, it says, you know, it has a schedule in the back of it and it says what happens to this asset. The only way your trustee can have authority over those assets is to have them be owned by the trust. So if they are still in your name, we have to go to court to pull them in. Now this process is for California, it's called a Hegstead petition. I'm not getting into any legal details, but in other states, they don't have these petitions and it just triggers a probate. So it's even worse in that regard. So it's important to be mindful of all of that. And so the trigger for me, you know, everyone over 18 needs the advance directive and power of attorney. And the trigger for me, whether you need a trust or not, is do you have kids or do you have assets? Because if your estate goes through probate, or if you just have beneficiary designations, which will bypass a trust and a probate, and it doesn't matter who's on that Benny designation, even if it's your ex-spouse, that's who's getting it, and there's no turning back from that. So Benny designations are a little dangerous because they get outdated and people don't update them. But it is important that you realize that if you have kids, they're getting everything at 18. So there'll be a custodian until they're 18 and then they're getting it. I don't know about you, but I don't know any 18-year-olds who can handle $5,000, let alone $50,000 or more. So it is really, really important for your kids' well-being to have a trust. So I think having the biggest thing I can say about the estate plan in general is it's a gift that you're giving the people you love so that you can avoid all of the trauma and drama and expense of the court process, and you will leave them knowing that they are honoring your wishes and that they aren't wasting money in court, so that they can really grieve and be present for you and this process. So it's important when you have these documents that the right people can find them. So it's not that I'm saying give all the documents to every fiduciary. I don't believe that for a variety of reasons I don't have time to go into today. But I will say tell your advance directive agent where your advance directive is, and also tell your power of attorney where the document is. For your power of attorney, have logins and passwords and bills organized so that they can seamlessly take over. It's a nightmare to figure this out.
Yeah. So Rebecca, on that note, I'm going to pause you there.
Okay.
And see if there's anything at the Q&A at the end, maybe we'll be able to add, but I thank you for that. I had the opportunity when I was running a free resource and support center for family caregivers that I went through this advanced care, this comprehensive estate planning process with Rebecca, which was very helpful for me to see what, how it's done. My focus and priority right now is helping individuals with advanced care planning, that little nugget of piece in addition to this estate planning. So that's something that's really a priority of all of us that are on this panel, is really around that healthcare piece, that we can be of support for you and the individuals you work with and the appropriate resources to help out. So Rebecca, thank you so much for that. I'm gonna go ahead and hand it over to Jill right now to share Death Doula LA, to share a little bit about ceremony and a little bit Death Doulas and so on.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. So I noticed in the poll that 24% of you are here, you know, for information about end-of-life midwifery or end-of-life doulas. So hopefully I can fill that gap for you guys today. What is my background? So initially I set out to be a public historian. I worked in archives, artifact research and collections in North Carolina. So I was trained to work in archives. It wasn't until death really interrupted my life for the first time through an experience with a brain death, which is a whole different subset of how people, like a way that people can die that's actually much more complicated and very confusing. So after dealing with all of that and going through it, I was really left in the dust of like, okay, why didn't anybody help us who was like supposed to help? I mean, they did, the best they could do was like send in a Catholic priest. It was very strange. No one was like even religious, and they like send in this like Catholic priest to give our dying loved one last rites. And like no one asked for this. It was very, yeah. And I was like, I think that was their attempt of like a there, like pat on the back. But you know, just even listening to Rebecca and everything she's saying about the state, that was a whole nother part of this death. But what struck me the most was the lack of the support, understanding like, okay, death is impacting us here and now. How do we get through this now? And that's really when I transformed my career. When it started back in the day, I guess, I mean, doulas have always existed in one way, shape, or form. I typically find a natural, you know, being a doula is a really natural thing. And typically I find one family kind of has already like a doula type player, you know, when we work with them. But, you know, the reason I'm really here today is give you a deeper look into the work that I do and how we really step in and help families as end-of-life doulas or end-of-life midwives. I do this full time. I came off of a background of a clinical chaplaincy. So after being done with the history part of my life, I went back, I got a master's degree in theology, and then I did all my clinical pastoral education units and certification to become a clinical chaplain. So I was able to work in the healthcare system, in hospitals, in oncology, in palliative care, in the emergency room, in hospice. So that's my background, and I've been around, I think we calculated the other day, like at least 9,000 families at this point during my career. So I have extensive experience there. What I do now is really similar to what I did before. I think one of the big differences is that I'm not paid by anybody else. I set my rates, I run my own business. I don't have to answer to administrators, which I have always been the kind of person who didn't fit into the box, and I'll be really upfront about that. So for me, becoming a doula is probably a more natural thing because it's really something that doesn't fit into a box, and it's really something that we work in like a total gray area space. Everything we do is a gray area. Explaining exactly what we do can be tricky. So I stepped out of healthcare to be able to purely advocate for the patient, or what I now call client only. So I can look my clients in the eyes and say, I work for you, I will protect you, I will not let them hurt you. And I can say that genuinely. And I mean that on both ends, because as doulas, we work in two systems. We straddle the clinicians, so the clinical side of dying, and then we also are involved in the funeral side of dying. So advocating for what's best and safe and appropriate for your client at any given time, some that, you know, we really do. You know, 99% of the time, just like I am today, I feel my way through every situation. I walk in, it's gonna be a blank slate. I've done a consultation, I know where the family is coming from, but you never know what's gonna happen when you walk in the door and what kind of like vibes are gonna be coming in. So just feeling the room, meeting people where they're at, never come in with an agenda because they're gonna tear it apart anyway. Let the dying person lead. If they're not able to lead because they're already in their unconscious dying phase, talk to the family about who they are. You're always trying to dig up the narrative. Who are you? Let's start there. Before you tell me about your illness and anything, what kind of person are you? Because that's really going to be a compass on how, you know, we're going to get you the services and, you know, create your end of life narrative here. Because what I give people the freedom to do, you know, Reimagine Festival, the attention is so powerful. We're reimagining a new way. Doulas are really opening the door for clients to reimagine their own death. Guess what? You don't have to die in a hospital. You don't have to be buried in a coffin. You can make your own coffin if you want to. You know, there's so much you can do on both ends. It just takes a good advocate and a good imagination. You know, be creative. Ask your clients to be creative and authentic. So digging out that authenticity and then sitting down with them. Once you hear the story, you'll understand how to navigate this case. You'll understand the family and what roles they're going to play. And then all you do is put a plan in place that is their plan. They've created this plan. You just organize it for them, give it to them, and then you just kind of step back and support, you know, however you can, quietly, without being the center of attention. You set them up, you get them ready to go, and then you just hold for support. And I think that's the kind of like behind the red tape on what it really is to be a doula. Is we're here for that story. We're here for that narrative. We're going to listen, we're going to protect, and we're going to guide you through this. And just be your biggest ally and cheerleader. And we work towards the best possible ending that we can. So yeah, that's my spiel. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions later, so I'm looking forward to that. Oh, I think you're on mute, Steph. I didn't mute you this time, I promise.
Oh, right. Oh, I did it to myself. I have to do that. Thanks so much for sharing the work and really for death doulas to fill in this space of transitioning with individuals and making sure their goals of care are being honored. Sometimes family dynamics and grief are huge throughout our lives, and especially at death, especially if you're dealing with a terminal illness. So having somebody else come in and really know that you're an advocate for what you want and don't want, and be there as a model for family members is beautiful. So there's so many different aspects of it. So thank you so much for that. Okay, we are now moving over to Sean. And Sean she has a lot of resources. So I'm still learning all the time. I'm always trying to keep up with Sean with her funeral director information. So she has 3 slides here. We're going to kind of take some time to go through, so then we can get to a powerful story of Megan's as well. So go for it, Sean.
Can we put Sean on the spotlight video?
Yes, thank you so much for reminding me. Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me again, Stephanie. And I'm happy to be a part of this wonderful group of ladies with wonderful resources. For those who don't know who I am, I'm Sean Lavaluradami. I founded DIY Dying, which is a licensed funeral establishment in Long Beach, California. I offer before and after death care. I have an extensive, many years of experience in the funeral industry and have assisted thousands of families in various types of situations and settings and different services. So it gives me a wealth of knowledge that I believe is why Stephanie has brought me on board. And I'm an advocate of educating people on what possibilities and options are available for you, especially when it comes to your final resting place and the services that would go along with that. So I'll try to keep it pretty concise. With regards to why you would want to hire a funeral home or what funeral directors would provide services to you would be in the sense of communicating with the health departments, the coroners, the crematories, the cemeteries, the manufacturers of urns and caskets, so that having a funeral director handle those aspects leaves the family more time to be present in in the moment of what's going on in planning the services or the ceremony side of things. If you're experiencing a loss or looking to pre-need or just make advanced planning, I recommend you, highly recommend you shop around, call at least 3 funeral homes, visit 3 funeral homes, look at a few different websites, kind of take notes, get a sense of the tone of the person, the information that they're sharing. Are they freely willing to give you the information? Do you have to pry? If in person, did they hand you the consumer guide and the general price list before discussing any pricing or services? Also, something to consider is to keep in mind that when you actually put your wishes in writing or are making funeral arrangements, there will be paperwork that needs to be completed. And on the screen, you can see a few of the items, such as the death certificate information, which would be the vitals that a funeral director uses to populate the death certificate. There would be an authorization for release. There are some state forms. Here in California, there's 3. You can see them there: disclosure, pre-need, an embalming form, and a cremated remains disposition form. There are also, if you're cremating, you would have cremation authorizations. If you're burying at a cemetery, of course, then the cemetery would have their authorizations. If you're planning a service, there's service information. And then finally would be a statement of goods and services. You can go to the next slide, Stephanie, if you like, because next I would like to just briefly touch base in regards to burial and the difference between a traditional burial and a green burial. Common things to consider when going either route: you're going to have to purchase the plot, which is the property, the opening and closing, need to know if there's a need for a vault or no vault, and then the marker. These are all fees that you want to be aware that you will incur when purchasing a plot for a burial. Now, traditional, something to remember is that most commonly the body has been embalmed, dressed, casketed in a metal casket or wood casket and presented for viewing. And then that is placed in a vault inside the ground and will be there for a long time. Whereas the green burial is usually a home funeral, unembalmed body prepared by family, cared for by family, then wrapped in a shroud or put in a biodegradable casket or coffin of their choice, and then placed directly in the soil. With a traditional burial, it's machine dug. With a green burial, it's usually hand dug, and certain cemeteries will allow families to partake in that. So that's another benefit of going green is that it involves the family more. And so the last thing I like to mention is there's always an option for disinterment with a traditional burial. We can disinter, bring them back out and cremate them later if were to be necessary. Whereas green burial, the whole goal is to go back into the earth. So it is more of a permanent option. If you go to the next slide, then you can see alternatives for dispositions rather than traditional or green burial. We have, Stephanie, if you can change the slide when you have a chance. There you go, perfect.
Now
Then,
I'm bringing my mom some cupcakes, so maybe when she...
I want cupcakes. Back to the slides and the information. My favorite is full body burial at sea. And if you go in a shroud, it's a green burial at sea.
I love you.
The
I hope you can hear.
other option would be in a metal casket where there are multiple holes drilled. Here off the coast of Los Angeles County, between San Pedro and Catalina, there is actually a sea cemetery where we go out and bury casketed remains. So that is an option, although I wouldn't want to release a metal casket in the ocean myself personally. The most commonly selected disposition nowadays is fire cremation, where the body is reduced to cremated remains through fire. It is not an eco-friendly process. Aquamation would be the alternative for an eco-friendly version of that, which is water cremation. And I'm happy to say it's legal here in California now as of July. And at the end of the year, we should be offering it here in Southern California, because I do know of a crematory that is putting a machine in. So that's a wonderful option as well, because with cremation, you have a multitude of things you can do once you have the remains. You can do memorial space lights, you can do memorial reefs, you can scatter at sea, scatter on land, you can scatter by plane, scatter off a volcano. You can make cremated remains into art pieces, into tattoos, into jewelry. Really, the sky's the limit and beyond, as well as one other thing that I just was asked yesterday was about the tree planting and becoming a tree. So that's also an option where the remains are placed in a bio urn and then a tree is grown from that. Really quick, whole body donation. Usually the body is processed wherever you donate it to, and on occasion there may be some remains left. And then those would be then most commonly, I haven't heard of any other way here in California, but they are cremated. And most of the institutions would scatter you at sea unwitnessed and not return the remains back to the family. So that's something to keep in mind when you're searching for a center to donate your body or organs to. You want to know what all is involved with that. Recompost, which is really cool and it's new. It's not actually up and running yet, but it will be soon in Washington State, where the body is reduced to soil. So they process the remains over a period of time, and what's returned to the family or left afterwards would be literally soil, which is also really cool. And then there on the bottom, what to do with remains. As I mentioned, there's so many different things you can do. One thing I forgot to say though, which is my newest favorite thing to do with cremated remains, instead of getting the remains in ash form, we have a new way you can receive them, which is in solid form, which they would be returned to you in stone form, which is so awesome that you can have your loved one in the stones and hold them and share them and do what you want with them. Take them with you because now they're a stone versus this ash form. Once again, thank you so much for having me. I know it's a lot of information and I'd be more than happy to share time and go over any details or questions any of you may have afterwards or in the Q&A session. Thanks.
Yeah, Sean, there's so much once we start opening up the questions and really looking about what's important to us while we're living our wishes that we're really talking a lot about, but after we die, what's important to us and to our family as well, and giving some direction because there's so many different aspects to consider. One of them, you know, what kind of form you want to be in and how you want to be memorialized, as well as costs, or what, you know, what how you want to live on or in spirit or with people memorializing. So thank you so much for that. Now, I think a critical piece in all of this is really highlighting our individual stories, and our colleague Megan Carmichael is so willing to share her own story and her own journey as a death care professional, but also one with her own family. So I hand it over to Megan right now. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. I'm so appreciative to be a part of this panel and to participate in this. So what I want to tell is the story that really activated me and brought me into the death care space. In June of 2017, my mom, Kathi, passed away after a 7-month battle, and I do use that word deliberately, a battle with cancer. It was pretty extreme, but throughout the process, she really never lost control, and being decisive was one of her core values and one of her core character traits. So I have a quote here from her, which is, "Not making a decision is a decision." And so my mom, as I reflected on this story over the years, I really see where it was that she took control throughout the process, and sort of following the same model of the 3 professionals that have spoken ahead of me. The first was in the estate planning process. So not many people have their maybe 3rd phone call after receiving a pretty terminal diagnosis to their estate planning attorney, but my mom did. So one of the things that she really sought out was having a voice throughout. And so immediately after receiving a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, she reached out to her estate planning attorney, and she had been a financial professional for a number of years. But she reviewed all the documents, and that was something that brought her a great peace of mind, was knowing that as the end was approaching, that she had gotten everything into place and that the laws hadn't changed and it was updated. And it was actually pretty cool that she was able to rest assured that the work that she'd already done was going to benefit us. And one of the things that she did immediately was she changed the beneficiaries on one of her IRAs. And an IRA is an individual retirement account, which you can name any beneficiary. We in California are in a community property state. And so rather than having it roll to my dad, they were still happily married at the time of her death. She went ahead and updated her beneficiaries to me and my sister. And the very first time that the three of us were all able to be in the same place was at a family Christmas party that she was hosting, because she was always hosting. And she grabbed my sister and I and pulled us outside and pretty matter-of-factly let us know an inherited IRA is this, and it works this way. And with Rebecca on the line, I'm definitely not going to try to explain it because I'm sure I would mess it up. But she said, I have the ability to name you as the beneficiaries. So this is something that's going to be on your plate. And after I die, you're going to need to take the following steps. And the value of this asset is approximately X, and it factors into the total estate in this way. And the way that I would love to see you use this money is for perhaps education purposes, or to make improvements on a home or something of a larger nature. I wouldn't necessarily want to think of you using it just as a savings account. I'd want you to use this in ways that were meaningful, but I'm leaving it to you because I know that you can make those decisions, and I want you to know where the money came from. And she shared that a big chunk of these assets had been inherited by her from her mom. My grandma, Lucille Fitzpatrick, had been an operator for the phone company back when it was the Bell Company. And so those shares of stock that she received in the 50s, 60s, and 70s had grown over time to be quite a lot. And so very early on in her dying process, we were aware of some of those estate issues, and it really took a lot of the mystery out of it, and it made it less scary and less confusing. And it also opened up the conversation. She really brought us into the conversation about preparing for her end of life. I thought that was pretty interesting as I've reflected on it over the time. And what it also did was it set my sister and I up as adults, not as her children, but as adults, to participate in that conversation in the future when my dad was dying. So I thought that was really amazing. She was a teacher by nature. And so I really saw how that decision-making and that control translated into a sense of empowerment for us. Beyond that, in her dying process, which was over the period of 7 months, she took control by keeping her treatment and her diagnosis very private. In fact, she made it very clear from the beginning that she was going to create a bubble of trusted individuals who would be part of this, and that she would share or decline to share information as she saw fit. And I remember at one point, a well-meaning neighbor started asking me details about what kind of cancer treatments she was receiving. And I somewhat flippantly said, I don't know why I would know that. And if I did, I don't know why I would share that. We really didn't make the process about the cancer. We made it about life and about her life. And I think that's pretty special. And it also allowed me to own my sense of the story and to not try to live through her experience, but it gave me the space to experience my own anticipatory grief. One of the things that she did as she was dying, she was a seamstress. In fact, I'm sitting in front of a quilt that she made. They're all over, but one of the last things she sewed was a bag to hold all of her different medications and her tools and her Kindle and all the stuff that she needed as she was going to doctor's offices and coming to my house to visit my child. I only had one child, my daughter Lucy, in the picture on the right there. was about 18 months when my mom was diagnosed, and I was 3 months pregnant. So I look back at it now, and I remember when we were cleaning out my parents' house before my dad moved, and I saw that bag, and I really reflected on what it must have taken for her with her exhaustion to take the time to create the bag that met the needs that she had at that moment. And I saw that as a real sense of her taking control of her place in life at that time. Her demise took course over about 7 months, and she was diagnosed in November, and March was really the last time that we got good news. So from March through to the first week of June, it was pretty much a lot of bad news. And on June 3rd, she acquiesced to my dad and said, okay, fine, you can ask hospice to come in and evaluate me. I don't think that she was necessarily done, but she was willing to entertain the thought of that. And she gave hospice a good run for their money and really pushed them and put the screws to them as far as what they could offer and so on and so forth. She signed her paperwork at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on June 3rd and died at 5 a.m. the next morning. So it's just 13 hours of hospice. But what I really see there again is a sense of control, and she didn't really want to let go of that. So she made a decision to, yeah, Sean says that's very common. Yeah. She made a decision that when she was ready to go and the pros from Dover showed up and that my dad had the help, that she was ready to go, and she let go then, which was a gift to my family in a way. This was really our first death, and she was only 63 at the time. So it was pretty unexpected and pretty early from that sense. But to have her always give us some sense of this could get better, the next treatment could work, it was pretty special. And it was really her way. And something that I've had a conversation with, especially in the death care profession since I've joined in the past few years, is that she didn't get all that hospice had to offer. And that hospice has so much to offer as far as comfort and accommodations. And I really think that for my mom, doing it her way, she got exactly what hospice had to offer. And that was the permission to go and the knowledge that her family would not be left alone immediately thereafter. So we got a lot of benefit from hospice as far as the 13-month follow-up, or 13 months of follow-up and resources and access to those things. I was able to reach out to hospice and sort of have them help me make sense of what had happened and why it went so quickly. And just like Sean said, it's not uncommon, especially for people who are, I've heard it the executive way. The executive, she was a CFO. So people who tend to be in control of large corporations or businesses have a tendency to let go in that way. Finally, in her disposition, she made it very clear that she wanted no talk of what happened after she died or even her death. That was not part of her story. That was part of our story. And by her having a conversation about it or having a lot of opinions about how she should be memorialized or what type of service, she, in her perception, saw that as none of her business, much like her treatments were none of my business. And so we really let my dad take the lead, and we supported him, and we threw a party. And my mom was the ultimate hostess, the hostess with the mostess. And so in her backyard, where she had thrown a number of different parties, we threw a party. We actually were, we had connections with caterers and rental people and, hostesses and people that passed hors d'oeuvres and whatnot. And what we did is we created one room in the house that had been her sewing room. We cleared it out, and we had a table. I looked, Steph, and I'm so sorry I couldn't find it, but we had a table that my dad bought about 100 shot glasses, and people knew my mom, so they just showed up with whiskey. We didn't have to ask. They just showed up with bottles and bottles of whiskey. And so rather than having any type of eulogy or formal service, anybody who wanted to go have a moment to reflect on her life and how it had impacted them had a space to do it at any point during the party. And that really, again, it made the people who were there feel like she was just in the next room. It wouldn't have been authentic had we gone to another location and sat down and heard people talking. Through that party, I was able to hear more stories and more reflections than I could ever have imagined. And one of the things that we did was we had a wall, and people could write down her quotes or her Kathyisms. And it was really fun to see it grow over the course of the party, and to see the handwriting get sloppier and sloppier as people thought of more things to put up on the wall. But one of the things that really made me feel like we had done right by her was that we had caterers, and we had a taco truck. So we had somebody that was preparing food and serving food in the backyard. And after 4 hours of being there and serving food, they came to let us know that they'd reached the end of their time and they were leaving. And they said to my sister and I, by the way, I don't know what it is you're celebrating, but congratulations. And that has always made me feel like we did good. And that even though she didn't have an opinion or didn't share an opinion of what she wanted done, that we had done right by her memory, and we'd also done right by the memory of all the people that we were honoring. We were honoring that which was within, and all the impacts that she had made to all the people that were there. Another part of it that was fairly non-traditional is that it was invitation only. And a lot of funerals are widely open, but again, by respecting the way that she had created a bubble and brought in safe people and ensured that it was a curated group, we were able to really express those feelings. And as I've reflected back on it over the years, oh, by the way, the picture on the right is from her funeral in the backyard. And you can see that's genuine joy on our faces. We were having a blast. It was the last real party that we ever ended up throwing at that house. We didn't expect that, but it ended up being truly the last hurrah, not just for her, but for her, how she hosted and where she hosted. And the clothes that my kids are wearing in that picture, it's a little small, but the clothes that the kids are wearing were clothes that she had sewn. And without even asking, so many people showed up in clothes that she had sewn for them and brought their children in clothes that she had made. So that was really special. It was a really special way to see it carried forward. We also did some non-traditional scattering. So my dad, also a planner, also a partier, had purchased small containers. They were actually made for people who make like body scrubs. So he had a stack of those, and anybody who expressed interest in what we were doing with her ashes was offered to take a segment home. And so he actually spent a bit of his time at this party portioning out ashes and sending them off with people. And I tried to do a poll. I don't have an exact accounting, but I know that she has been scattered in New Orleans, the Outer Banks, Portland, and a year after her death, on June 3rd of 2018, my dad rented a stretch limo and brought their two best friends, my sister and I, and our husbands. So it was just 9 of us. And he took us on a tour of all the places that had been important in their relationship and in their coming together. And in each place, we scattered a small amount of the ashes. And I will say, disclosure, that's not legal. And it's also not illegal. You're going to be hard pressed to find anybody that's going to sue you for that. But we did get a chance to go around and really reflect after the fact. And I thought that was pretty special. So throughout all of it, we really did it our way, and we didn't allow the system to pressure us into things. And as I've reflected, especially as I reflected in preparation for today, I really see her taking control of the estate planning, which she could control. We have a saying in our family, if money can solve it, it's not a problem, because you can always find a way to get more money. But the real problems in life are the things that money can't fix, like cancer. And so by her saying, I can solve the problem I can solve, and I can ensure that information is communicated in the way that I want it to be communicated, empowered all of us to do that as well. And it just started raining where I am. That's beautiful.
Yay, thank you. I see Jill, we can do any sort of hand gestures of gratitude for all of you that have shared so much today. Megan, when you sent me this picture, I'm like, Megan, you're looking very 80s over there on the left, because the picture, you and your mother, I said to you the other day, I want to hear your mom's voice. And you're like, well, you listen to me all the time. Like, you hear Kathi, and I see Kathi in you, and your kids in you as well. So thank you for sharing that so much. So this is really an opportunity for us to chat, to get some Q&A and answer some of your questions. We do have some good time to go ahead and do that. And so I want to definitely have our panelists, like I said, Catlin has been our chat moderator, so I have some things that have come in that I'll review, and then we'll just share it with the group here. So some of it has started really with Rebecca, about some of the differences between and you've answered some of the questions in there already, but there's a lot of different questions about healthcare directives. There's those two directives, the power of attorney for health and advanced healthcare directives for finances. Can you talk a little bit about the differences between those two? And also, what do you do if a loved one's medical power of attorney begins to show signs of incapacity? So like if the agent has incapacity, what are some of the things that you would say, you would share about capacity and not regarding advanced healthcare directives?
So first, the advanced directive is only for health, and it is comprised of two parts. One is the power of attorney, who can make the medical decision for you, and the other is what your wishes are. So that is specific only to health and your body and where you live and who takes care of you and all that kind of stuff. The power of attorney is literally for every other thing that you get on your desk or that you get via email, so that person is handling everything not health related. So I hope that clarifies. Every person should have both of those documents. It's not about how much money you have, but you're going to have a credit card, or you're going to have a mortgage, or whatever you're going to have, that a car payment, and a bank account, and nobody will speak to you without those documents. Remember also that the power of attorney that we create, or the statutory form, is universally applied, but every financial institution has their own version of that. So be mindful that you're not going to just walk into a bank or a financial institution and say, hey, I need a power of attorney. They're going to have to send it to legal. It's going to take time. Make an appointment with a bank manager, or a manager in some position, so that you can be as effective with your time and efficient as possible.
Rebecca, I have documents. Oh, just a follow up on that. When does an advanced healthcare directive go into effect? I think that's it. Like, if somebody, when does it go into effect? And I know, Sean, we also talk about the question of how it affects what you do with the body afterwards. So the importance of an advanced healthcare directive from that, like, when does the agent go into effect, and the need for the body afterwards?
So there's two choices in an advanced directive, and a power of attorney for that matter. It's either immediately effective when it is signed, or it is effective, springing effectiveness, which is when you're deemed incapacitated by one or two doctors or committee or whatever the hell is written in this document. I like to make them immediately effective, because I don't like to go through doctors. Doctors do not, and I know there's some medical professionals here, doctors don't like to get involved in our legal process, and it can take months. I mean, I'm still waiting. Like, Kaiser is the worst, and I'm sorry if there's any Kaiser people out there, but they don't like, those doctors won't sign cap decks for us. And so it can be months until your agent can make decisions for you, which can be really damaging in lots of different ways. So we like to make them immediate. I don't give the documents out to everybody. It all depends what the family situation is, but those are the two choices. And if your document is silent, it doesn't say when it's effective, the default is two doctors.
Okay.
And then really quick, since you mentioned about after death, and when it comes to funeral homes, you have to make sure that you've communicated properly to your agent your wishes, what you want done after you're dead. So did you want to be cremated? Did you want to be buried? Did you want to donate organs? Do you want to donate your body? What is it you want? And make sure that you've communicated it with your primary agent as well as your secondary agent, because I've run into situations where the primary agent, many years later, is either no longer alive themselves, unavailable, or declines to step forward. And so it reverts now to the second person. So you want to just make sure that you've clearly discussed your wishes with these people, because your body, your disposition, your life is in their hands.
And
Yeah.
most importantly, it should be written in the document. Don't rely on these memories.
Right. Or I can give you an advanced death care directive that you can complete and put all that in.
And I think there's, with the AARP kind of documents, if you go on there for advanced healthcare directives, you can find them by state. And I know one of the reasons Jill and I talk about, like, we like using that one because it states in there, it talks directly about a check off if you want this person to have responsibility after your after you die, responsibility for your body.
Right. And it also says like organ donation,
Yes.
And autopsy. So, if for whatever reason your loved one wants to do a private autopsy, that's your like key to say no, don't do that. You'd be surprised how many people try to do that.
Now, the other important thing in terms of identifying your agents, I know a lot of people have family of choice rather than that know them better than knowing their wishes. So the idea of really having agents that know you and what your wishes are in terms of having responsibility for your choices while you're living and after you die as well, because I know that can be really complicated, and having an advocate around is so important. Rebecca, is there anything else you wanted to finish up on talking about the directive piece?
Just, I guess the one thing you touched upon was what happens if your next in line loses capacity. So remember, you can't create these documents once you lose capacity. This is defined by a court, or back up by a doctor, or back up by a really savvy lawyer to say, like, I think there's some issues. Ultimately, we rely on doctors for capacity. But if you still have capacity and your next in line is showing signs, or just you think they're not going to honor your wishes or whatever, do a new directive. Anything that's the most recent is the one that supersedes. And so be careful. You want to ask people's permission to be on these documents, but I wouldn't give them out except with certain situations, because then if you have a new one that you've created, there's multiple versions of your documents and that can get messy.
Okay, thanks. So I wanted to go over to Jill and talk about, if you can share a little bit about, explain a little bit the value of hospice, what you can get from that as a team, and how you as a death doula can work with, as you said, a team and caring for individuals. If you could talk about that. And some people were also interested in the profession itself and what's needed, or what do you think is important in terms of getting started?
Yeah, so with hospice, hospice is a benefit that's covered by Medicare. And with that benefit comes a lot, actually. Not only do you get your medications, your equipment, your supplies, and all your visits like at your residence. So wherever you reside, if it's in an assisted living, a hospice facility, or at home, a vacation home, whatever, they come to you, and they function as like an at-home, clinical circle of care. So you have 2 doctors looking over your case and taking care of your case. You have your RN case manager that checks in probably once every 2 weeks. They have to come once every 2 weeks. And the team, the entire team, also has to meet once every 2 weeks and report to the doctor and talk about each case in full. So hospice keeps on the up and up with your case. You also get auxiliary nursing support. If you need a nurse to come to the home, you can call and have hospice come out, or have them direct you for what you need over the phone. You get access to a bathing aid, which is usually the client or patient's favorite part, because this person is the one, you know, taking care of their personal dignity, staying clean, maybe the person who changes their diaper, you know, so, and then you also get psychosocial resources like social workers and a chaplain, and if a hospice is good, they'll have a variety of volunteer resources like massage therapy, sound therapy, pet therapy, maybe a volunteer doula. Doulas work outside of the circle of the care because typically we come into the picture before the family even chooses a hospice. Sometimes we go, you know, with whatever hospice they're already on. But I like my families to interview hospices to make sure it's a good fit, because ultimately it's the hospice team that's gonna shape quite a bit of your end of life experience. So you want to be able to trust them. I usually serve as a communicator between hospice and my families, so there's not so much back and forth. Like a big part of my job is just managing logistics to lessen stress, and this is a big part of it. So, you know, instead of giving the family an update, maybe the nurse will have permission to give me an update, and then I can translate that to the family and we can talk about it. I can also arrange like family meetings with hospice, do different things. And if hospice isn't doing their job, I'll tell hospice and the family. And, you know, if they don't change their tune, we'll get a new hospice. So I'm always, you know, advocating for that. So that's your question about hospice. Were there any specific questions about doula work or doula business, or?
Well, you know, some people like how to get started. I think there's some clarity of, you know, there's different training programs or accreditations. I know different people look at it a different way in terms of getting stated right now, because there isn't, you know, it's somewhat clinical, right? So, but what is—
Yeah, there's two pieces to it. Yeah, there's the clinical and the funeral, and those are really the pieces that you have to put together and learn. You don't have to have a doula certification. You know, some people like the structure and the order, but I'd also say that there's a lot of recycled information out there, and a lot of that information like was free to begin with. So be careful where you're like getting your information from. Sean thinks training is a great start. Yeah, everybody has to have some kind of training, but depending on your background and where you come from, you might just naturally be able to jump into this work and learn, you know, the pieces that you need to be. Ultimately, if you're trying to do this work, you have to start a small business. So not only do you have to be well-versed in clinical stuff, funeral stuff, be able to function around complicated family systems, remain calm, have a certain demeanor. You know, you also, I forgot where I was going with this.
You have to be able to have a business and run a business.
Right. Yeah, you have to become a business entity. You know, you have to get your DBA and choose what kind of business you want to run, what kind of business you start with, and maybe level up to a different kind. You need to have your tax, you know, ID number. You need to have a business bank account. So
yeah, and I think with the
No,
business, oh, go ahead,
I want
Megan.
to interject. I think my favorite answer to this is one that you gave in a training that I took from you before we had ever met. The first time we ever encountered one another, you said in a training that if you want to get into this line of work, go be part of the 5% that hospice relies on for volunteers. One of the legal requirements of all hospice is that 5% of their workload must be handled by volunteers. And I was not in a position to be volunteering bedside, nor is that really my interest. I volunteered in the administrative office of my local hospice, and nothing in the world has ever given me a better perspective than just filing all the paperwork that hospice does and getting it into the right files, and then getting those files placed in the right place, and getting to see what it's like when the nurses come in and out and they leave the door open when they're talking about cases, and you sign all the NDAs and everything, but you get to hear the way hospice approaches the situation. And I don't see how anybody could be a death doula or an advocate in that realm if they hadn't had an inside view of how hospice operates. And I'll tell you, every hospice is willing to bring you in to do filing. You do not have to sit bedside.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's so many different ways that you can function as a doula. And yes, Rebecca, basic liability, insurance. So ultimately setting the backbones of an actual business and then functioning. I think I always say the best way to get the information is go direct to the primary source and volunteer. Even before you think about doing a training program, what is that training program going to teach you how to do more than, just volunteering for hospice and learning how hospice does their job. So you just really have to look at it and make a decision for yourself. What I don't like about training programs is when they recycle free information, charge you for it, and then put you in a box. And then you come out of their box and you don't know what the hell's going on still. And so just be very careful when you're looking at these systems.
Yeah. And I think there's also, like, what we've done here is that we're in community and having that others to have conversations and that we can speak openly about it and get education from different areas. So I think it's really important. I think it's, I always go back to my C's of community and compassion and courage to kind of see where you sit in this end of life space. And a lot of people come to it from personal experiences and knowing that if I did this with my family, I could potentially do it with others, because it's hard doing it with your own family, from doing the advanced healthcare, the estate planning conversations, all the way through the ceremony. So I think it's always kind of, if you can tap into it for yourself and see where you can navigate that and do that for others as well. So I think that's very important.
And someone did ask about pay. Doula work is private pay. You're gonna have a scale of clients that can pay whatever. It's up to you what you take. I have X amount of pro bono hours that I can work with a year, but you should get paid for your work. This is really hard work. This is one of the reasons why I don't work for Medicare anymore, because I'm not making $26 an hour with a master's degree and doing everything that I do for families. It's unacceptable. So get paid for the work that you do.
So going back to planning, because that's all, like, this all takes time. The documentation and the conversations. That's what I kind of do with advanced care planning, right? You have the conversation and directives, and each one of the individuals that are on this panel today, you saw very clearly all the different things that we have. And I love Sean and I, and also Megan, we're all about the resources and lists. So after this, you will be getting a nice chunk of PDF along with the slide deck and recording. So you'll be able to have a lot of that as well. I want to kind of just end here with kind of legacy. We did talk about legacy planning, and sometimes I know we can look at it in a technical term in terms of maybe even more financial planning, but I really wanted to go through with the time we have with our speakers today is kind of some last minute thoughts on what does legacy mean to you. Well, I'm going to say that again. What does legacy mean to you, both personally and professionally? And it could be the same. I just want to give you an opportunity to share that, some lasting words with the group here today. So let's start with Rebecca, and we'll go down the panel.
Okay.
Legacy to you personally and professionally. Go for it, Rebecca.
I think it's the same, because I personally and professionally and just am the same. So what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
I think leaving family feeling like they've honored your wishes, if you can care for them financially and give them some tools to navigate that, like Megan was talking about, is really important. And leaving everyone in as much emotional harmony as possible. So I think that's my definition.
Emotional harmony. Love it. Thank you so much. All right. I don't think you're going to get this talk from all the lawyers you work with, right? Let's talk about emotional harmony.
They don't want emotional harmony. They want the money for the billable hours when people fight.
I know. You are a blessing. You are an absolute blessing.
I was just going to swear, but I am.
All right. Thank you. All right. Jill, go for it.
I live my legacy, I live an authentic life, a life full of love and joy and fun. And, when I die, it's over. And so I try to impact people as much as I can in the present. And, I just try to live every day as a legacy. It sounds like really cheesy, but it is true. Every day I do something that impacts another person in some kind of loving way, even if it's just my partner. But I have intention for that, and that's how I choose to live my life. And you know, my dad was that way, so I probably got it from him.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. All right, Sean, I'm going to spotlight you.
Sure. I want to piggyback there on Jill. I feel the same way. I think you should live your life in the present. You can only focus and work on what you can control today, and what you can share with those that are around you. So the legacy you leave is to have families speak of you for generations because of the impression and the difference you made in your life now. So I that's how I live my life, and hopefully my future generations will remember me for the way I did.
Thank you. All right, Megan.
You know, I got to say it. Legacy is authenticity, and I'm just going to say the same thing everybody else says, but I think there's a reason why we found ourselves helping people as they die, and it's because we've seen what it means to do it well and what it means to maintain your own sense of self all the way through to the end and beyond.
Catlin, I want to put you on the spot here too. If you want to kind of show yourself and share, because you are part of this team, I'm going to put I always say I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, and then I do. But you are part of this. You're part of this community, so there you go.
Thank you. Well, I think I'm not just speaking for myself, but for my colleagues at Institute on Aging and within the aging services community throughout the Bay Area and beyond. All of us have gone into the work of some type of service within this community, not because we knew we were going to come out of it ragingly rich in terms of finances, but because we knew that it would impact lives. Our mission at IOA is to keep elders living in place independently as long as possible with the services and care they need. And I feel very good about being attached to this organization as a result, as do all of my colleagues. And the other members of the aging services throughout the Bay Area have very similar missions, and we're all proud to be part of one community.
Oh, terrific. Yeah.
I want to say, like, aging in place, I wrote it in the chat, but this is so true. I've changed my entire model of helping my clients. We're no longer looking for assisted livings, which was the huge trend, you know, all along. But now one person gets COVID and everybody's affected. It's a death trap. So learning how to help your clients age in place and get those resources, which is a ton of resources. It takes a village, people. So utilize, you know, what Catlin has at this center, learn from her, because this is the future. We thought it was going to be facilities, but it's not. It's at home.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of meeting people where they're at with what they're looking for, you know, the kind of care they want. So thank you for that.
Really quick, Stephanie.
Yes.
Same goes along the lines with the funeral side of things. Because of COVID, I've gone through being able to offer viewings and witnesses at the crematory 1 minute to it not being available, to having home funerals, to not having home funerals. Can I not? So just know that anything and everything is possible, and you can do things yourselves to build your community.
Well, that's it. The home funerals, taking care of bodies at home. That's could be a beautiful process for people. So many different ways to ritualize, which is a whole other topic that I want to do. Ritualization and grief are other areas that I definitely think are continuation of our discussion today. Virtual memorials are definitely some of the other things that are becoming so talked about now for connection. And it might look different, but that feeling of connection is so important. I invite you all to kind of put some parting thoughts of how you're feeling right now after you've gotten a lot of information and content and perspectives. So if you want to add how you're feeling in the chat box, once again, Catlin, stay tuned. Catlin will be sharing, if you need or can get CEU's evaluation for yourself to fill out, as well as a PDF of all our contact information with some of our go-to resources you can check out. And we're all here for you. So maybe we can cut and paste our information just in there for you. We have it in the top of this chat, but also put it in the bottom. But let us know how you're feeling with the next couple of minutes. I said I was and had some excitement and anticipation as I started here with all of you, but now I feel content in knowing that I'm not alone in knowing that there's resources out there, and getting a little more educated each time of little pieces and nuggets, and knowing that I have some go-to resources, the A-team, if you will, along with many others that have written in the chat box that have shared what they do with their own clients as well. So thank you for that. So thank you. And so yes, definitely stay tuned to getting more information. Our resources are in the chat box, and you'll get it in the follow-up information.
And when the recording is ready, Stephanie, may I send that out to everyone as well?
Sure. With my technical difficulties, if you don't mind that, you will definitely be getting the recording as well, and the slide deck.
I would say, compared to some I've seen, Stephanie, your skills were mad. So
all right,
don't worry about it.
Yeah. Thank you all for being here.
Sending out evaluations to those who need CEUs, and you can return those to me. That will all be handled digitally within the next 7 to 10 working days, okay?
Thank you. How is the panelist speaking? How are you guys feeling right now?
Good. I gotta go to work. I've got a client.
Okay.
I gotta go.
All right. All right. Be well. Thank you for being with us and holding space for us, Jill. Born with us.
Okay. Thank
so
you,
much.
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks, Kellen.
Thank you all. On behalf of IOA, we thank you.
Turn off the recording.